Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering current events on your Thursday morning Rise and Shine. Current events we're covering here this morning, and our topic is how to face future and current troubles. How to face future and current trouble is our topic for this morning. So, top of the morning to you. Welcome again to our live talk program. Hopefully, you had a blessed night rest and you're ready to take on today, the day that the Lord has given you. And so, with that, we'll begin with a short word of prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, we thank thee again, dear Lord, for your love towards us. We thank you, dear Lord, for the wisdom that you bestow in our lives, the way you continue to guide us, dear Lord, in all things. Pray to may be with us, dear Father, as we look at these things that are happening around us and how to prepare, dear Lord, for the troubles that are here and more to come. May you bless us, we pray, by thy Spirit, for Christ's sake. Amen. So again, we're looking here at how to face, how to deal with the troublesome roads that are ahead, whatever problems we have in our lives personally. But primarily what I'm dealing with is the larger issues that goes on in life. Now, as you've been observing for yourself, we've been seeing an increase in this season of massive disasters. And if you've been watching this, you would know that these disasters have been constantly increasing. They've been constantly getting worse and worse. And so for this reason, I think it's important to contemplate, well, how to deal with current troubles that are going on in this world. And when we do this, we basically prepare, putting ourselves in the best possible situation. So there's a lot of talk about preparation. And as I've done here, I've covered basically various different ways of preparing for a hurricane, preparing for any type of disasters I've covered here. But more than anything else, I think that one has to contemplate the preparation of just the whole life. So I'm going to cover some various different things that I think, talk about some of what's happening, but I'm going to talk about some of what I think is coming and will get worse. And as you contemplate these things, then it's important for you to know that you have to have a broader preparation, and the preparation that is given to us by following the Lord, by being Christians, is, I would say, a broader, better preparation for what is happening now and what is to come. And so how to make this preparation and to, as I say, be prepared or get prepared and stay prepared. And so this is what we want to look at for the next hour here. So thanks again for joining. Now, the Bible gives us a story of various instances throughout history when God's people face things like persecution. And as we look at the various different troubles that are coming up on the land from the various different source, then it's important for us to have an experience and to study even, and we're going to do some of this, the biblical passages that deal with how to be prepared. Because as I say, there's been a phenomenon that I watch over the years, especially when you watch a lot of like YouTube videos and hear a lot of people talk about prepping for end times. And a lot of what they talk about are important. Get your tent, get your go bag, get your ways to be able to have your food prepared and stuff like that. And a lot of when I listen to what they're preparing for, I think that they're not preparing for some of the troubles that are really coming, because they see the trouble coming from a wrong direction. And so if you have a misguided idea of what exactly is the trouble, many times the person will think that the main thing I need to get prepared, or how to get prepared for the end time, is probably to get a gun or a few guns. And you see people stockpile even 20 guns. And you're thinking you only can shoot one at a time, but I guess if you have all of them loaded, you could keep off a small group of people from raiding your property and taking your food supply. So it has made me think much on this topic. The other thing also is that you have to know where the trouble is coming from, what type of trouble is coming your way, and so that you can make that preparation. Because I'll give you some quick examples here. You see, members, there's people who will move out into the wilderness or into a very rural area and never thought about, well, what is the trouble that will hit this place first? And then next thing you know, there's a fire and they get burnt out of the house. And they're now 60-something. And they have to be thinking to move somewhere else because somehow they probably went to the area I never thought that. So they probably have to do a proper clearing and they have to do some things to be able to avoid fire. And you look where they're living, and they're living with the trees on top of them. And I'm thinking, you have fuel all around you, but most people don't look at that as fuel. And so the preparation is not very thought out. Then other people will, I say their primary preparation for the end time will be guns, because they will be marauding groups of people walking around trying to steal people things and kill people. And when you look at some of the big troubles, which we're going to look at in a second, you will quickly realize that some of the big troubles that we will face are things like disease. What happened when you're preparing for everything else, and you're thinking your primary trouble is going to be something else, and there's an outbreak of disease, and you're not in any way, shape, or form prepared to deal with that. Persecution is going to be another big problem. Natural disasters are going to be a big problem. You can't be talking about the end times and you live in a death trap. And it's an obvious death trap. Now, it's one thing if you live in an area and you didn't know. But if you're in an area and when you're standing on the ground level, you're in the bottom of a fishbowl, and if the water start coming in, you're going to drown. Well, why worry about all the stuff that's going to happen? Why focus that your biggest problem is going to be the papacy or something? Why not focus on your obvious beam in your eye and get yourself in a better situation? So we're going to broad base this morning and talk. So there's some things that are coming up that that most people are probably not aware of, is the removal of separation of church and state in America. This is something that the Bible predict will happen, that America will ultimately overthrow its constitution and will make it illegal to not be part of the mainline system of churches. And so this is something that is coming. The freedoms that we have, freedom of press, freedom of religion, will be taken away ultimately in America. And so if you're preparing, has to be part of your preparation, have to think this way, preparation for persecution. So it's interesting to hear people from mainline denominations who are lockstep and sync with trying to take over the government talk about the troubles for the last days, because the biggest troubles for the last days is coming from them, because they're trying to take over the government so they can force people to live according to their idea of what religion is all about. So it's so strange to hear people like that talk about preparation for the end times when they're the trouble in the end times. They're one of the major troubles, and they're making some powerful moves in America here to take over the government, and they're winning, as I remember some of them said when they elected Donald Trump. So we see some of that trouble coming. Also, we know that one of the biggest things that we've seen lately is the manipulation of the public via propaganda. And so many things that people watch on the television, on YouTube, various different conspiracy theorists basically are manipulating them. And you see this is one of the big troubles. So somebody said, why would I create trouble? Because you see a man and he could be sitting right next to you. You can't trust him because he will kill you thinking that you're the enemy, because he's confused by some propaganda. So those are some of the troubles coming. Also, increased disasters. We're seeing this. We know that the disasters will get more intense as the wickedness of the people get more intense. And we're going to cover that. So this is where most people are focused. Increased violent crimes. We'll talk about that. We will see an increase in violent crimes as we move forward in life. And we're seeing this, that men are getting more sadistic. And interesting enough, if you notice, a lot of the crimes are sometimes in the way of weird crimes. So that's something that's interesting. People want to kidnap and torture people and things like that. So it's kind of some sickness with that, some of those crimes. One of the things that I know has gotten worse is these mass murders and stuff like that. There's people killing innocent people for no reason. Increased drug use has created basically an epidemic, a plague in our society. So, as you know, we are particularly, I would say, in a good position in the sense that our primary message, that I know most of the church has rejected, but our primary message is temperance. We believe that one has to withhold, have self-control. And with that, that's majorly part of, in a major way, part of a lot of the troubles that we're facing, because increase in violent crimes It's one of those things. Even the thing of manipulating the public through propaganda is one of the major problems, because people have not only no self control in their eating or their sexual propensity or their greed, but also they can't control their mind. So if somebody says something to them and it's very emotional, they believe it. So this is something that we see will increase. Rumors of wars, that's something that will increase. So what that will create is a lot of refugees. And so people, a lot of movement of people. Last year, I think it was, I don't know how it is for this year. I don't know if it's slowed down, but last year, I remember, between spring and fall was one of the largest movement of people in history of the world. And so one has to know, how do we prepare for that? Because even the first point I made about persecution, where persecution come, Christ says, he who on the housetop, let it not come down into the house, let it just go. So Christ is even saying, so when things break off, sometimes you can't even stop to say, I'm going to get my go bag or my jump out bag. You got to just jump out and run. But if you run with only a shirt on your back, then you're in a trouble. You really need to have some serious preparation to be able to survive. So we're going to talk about how you get that preparation. Also, we find that political and social instability, we've seen this. This is currently part of our problem. We know that this is just going to be part of the environment as we go. Not just wars and rumors of wars, but political and social instability. We see that increasing amongst us. How do you survive this? All of that we're going to talk about. Drug-resistant diseases, plagues. We see this increasing where the drugs are not doing anything and people are just basically succumbing to weird disease like MRSA, various different type of flesh-eating bacteria that can't be stopped by any type of antibiotic or any type of drugs. Increased plagues, all dying off of fishes and birds and various different cattle. These are the type of things that we are facing. Increased economic slavery. This is why it's important to exercise temperance, self-control, because the aim of those that are in charge are those that have money. They have a mindset where they need to get more and at your expense. So you have to figure out now how to prepare for that. So if you listen to that list there and you think about what I just rambled off real fast, it would be obvious in anybody's mind that most of what people are preparing for, they're preparing to be able to survive in the middle of nowhere for a period of time. But they're not preparing for what is coming to clobber them. So imagine you're doing all your prepping, you're getting your go bag ready, while you're not focusing on somebody's trying to economically enslave you. You're not focused on your health, how to take care of your body without drugs, as the drugs get less and less effective because the bacteria are evolving around it. How do you deal with social instability? All this type of stuff here is important for us to consider the broader, some of what they do consider, but broader preparation. And so one of the first thing I'll say here is the first preparation is mental preparation. And that mental preparation that we prepare ourselves to be able to deal with what's coming is simply through the word faith. Now, faith is to me the mental preparation. Now, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, it says, but without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So they that come to God must believe that he is, and that he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So part of your first preparation is that you have to believe in God. Remember, the Bible tells us that as we move towards the end, that 1,000 will fall at one side of thee, and that 1,000 will fall at the other, but it shall not come nigh thee. Why? Because God is blessing you. God is protecting you. So you have to live by faith. You have to have faith. The Bible says that faith is like a grain of mustard seed, but it develops, it grows. You have to develop this. Because if you don't, you will go crazy. You'll go berserk, as they say. You lose your mind. You'll become troubled by the troubles that you see coming around you. And the more you get troubles, the less you can be properly prepared. So one has to have that type of mental preparation. One have to get mental tough, and to me, the best way to get mental tough is to have faith, is to believe that God is on the throne, God is still taking care of you, and have the mindset of the three Hebrew words that simply say that if God delivers us, that's good. But if it doesn't, we're good also, but we're going to remain faithful, because the trouble will come. And as I say, the Bible never tells us that we will not go through troubles, we will not go through trials, we will not suffer loss. It simply says that we just have to hold on to the hand. So how do you hold on to the hand? By start exercising faith now. If you're faithless now, it's time for you to start practice a little faith. Start stepping out and doing the thing that is right, living by the word of God, and suffer some consequence for the Lord, so that when you learn to lose, you learn to fail, you learn to suffer loss and still hold your head up high and still do the right thing, then you understand that, look, even if a flood should flood my home, even if people should persecute me, even if I should even get sick or whatever should happen to me, I'm going to still hold on to faith. And this is often the biggest success that you can have in life, because what it is that these things will happen, and when it happen to you, it'll just depress you. You'll feel like, well, why this happened to me? But if you know to live like those in the Bible, then you'll be all right. Because what it is that you'll understand that in this life you'll suffer loss and you don't take it so hard. But if you don't think that says you suffer loss in this life, when it happens to you, it'll devastate you. And that to me is the worst thing can be. That to me is that you're not prepared for persecution. You're not prepared for troubles in the end time if you don't know to live by faith. Now in Hebrews again, chapter 11, verse 32 onward, it says, "And what shall I say? What shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson and of Jephthah and David also, Samuel and of the prophets." Now, before we go and they start describing what they do, notice in common, they all know to go up against severe odds. They all know how to fight the battles of the Lord. And that's what faith does. And you want to be able to exercise faith. You want to be able to live by faith. And, because if you don't do this, what it is that when the battles get tough, you'll crumble. And that's one of the biggest things. Remember, the Bible says that as we come towards the end time, men's heart will fail them for fear of looking upon the things that are to come, because the things that are present are scary. And as they look upon the things to come, they're even scarier. Because if you understand that the disasters will get worse, you understand that men will become more corrupt, that men will become more violent, and that you could become the target of that violence, the target of that hate. As you understand that the disasters will increase, and God has says that He at times will wipe out the just and the unrighteous, the wicked and the good, then you look at what's coming on, and for many they'll look at it and their hearts will fail them. They'll look at it and they just go scared, because they're thinking, man, if this is so bad already, I can't imagine worse. I'm sure you've seen videos of people that fled places like St. Martin, places like St. Thomas, various different islands, and they went to, say, Puerto Rico. So they were in Puerto Rico because of the storms, Irma that had passed, and then they're in Puerto Rico, and then now Puerto Rico got hit. And so it's like you're running and you're thinking, well, you already lost everything, so at least I can suffer over here. And then now you go over there, and you go over there to wait for another storm to hit you. So this is why I say mental toughness, mental preparation is one of your best thing. To not believe in the falsehood of these pastors who tell us, peace, peace, while there's sudden destruction. You need to understand that we're in trouble sometime. This is a time to get your life, your soul right with the Lord. This is a time that if you never exercise faith before, you always excuse and say, oh, I don't see no big deal with this. Or I don't see any big deal with that. Why do we have to do this? Why have to be so extreme? Probably now is the time for you to get some zeal and start to practice some self-control and start to say, oh yeah, I think this is important. Because as I say, you think things are bad, things can always get worse. And so you don't lose your mind over these things. So notice here now what these men of faith experience. Verse 33 says, who through faith subdue kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtain promises, stop the mouth of lions, quench the violence of fire, escape the edge of the sword. Out of weakness were made strong, wax valiant in flight, turn to flight the armies of the alien. Notice nothing that they're doing there is a faith that is just believe and go to church and that's it. They're dealing with real troubles. They're dealing with real violence. They're dealing with terrible situation. Their religion is a practical religion. Their religion is not a religion that is just morning devotion and even devotion. That's part of it, but that morning and even devotion prepares them to go fight the battles of the Lord. Their time with the Lord prepares them to go deal with real life situations. And what we're looking at is that we're looking at real life situations, real life struggles. And you got to be prepared for that. You got to have a religion that is a practical religion, because the troubles that are coming up on the world, no one will be exempt. It just has to be with how do you prep up for it. That's what we're looking at. Now, women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel and mocking, and scourging, yea, moreover of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskin and goatskin, being destitute, afflicted, and tormented. So there we notice there, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. This is real test of faith. This is not a kind of experience where, you just pray and the troubles go away. This is you pray and the troubles come. And then as they come, you pray for grace. You pray for God's mercy. And you go through. So this is what's coming. And when you understand that you could suffer loss. You could be very faithful, prayerful, devotional, and all that beautiful thing. And your house get destroyed. Then what you do next? You still have to just pick up the pieces like everybody else around you and keep going. Sometime it will come and you get spared. But faith is not avoiding of trouble altogether. We pray daily and ask God to deliver us from evil. But sometimes that evil come at our doorstep. Sometimes it comes right into our house. So we have to exercise faith. A few more verses in this part here. And it says, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts, so they were broke, because it say was afflicted, destitute, and tormented. If you're destitute, that means you're broke. So this is why I'm not one to believe. I believe that the Lord can prosper you and bless you, but you might not. You might have to, for the righteousness' sake, lose a job, lose money, lose even family relationships. So you could be destitute and still be the most righteous person walking the face of the earth. This is what the Bible teach. Prosperity gospel teach that says if the more money you have, the more God bless you. Yet we know the Bible says that the prophets were often in basic clothes, some of the most basic clothes, that when John the Baptist turned upon the scene and he looked so impoverished, they thought, hey, John the Baptist must be a prophet because he dressed so simple and he ate so simple. Where is your diet? Where is your dress? How is it? Or would somebody mistake you and say, man, you live such straight life that they think you're a prophet? Very important. This is part of your mental conditioning for the times we're living in. So, of whom the world was not worthy, they wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. And so we want to be able to make that preparation. And this is the preparation that I believe in that we ought to make. Now, another thing that I think is important here is to understand the benefit of retired living, provided that it provide much security. So retired living. Now, when I say retired living, I mean somebody that's retired, but retired in the sense of is pulled back from the major city centers. It's another major thing that we are told is important to do. And so in your preparation, consider this well, because as you understand that normally, like if you look at the study of the Dark Ages, the thing that protected God's people one of the major protection that they had was that God sent them into the wilderness. So the righteous had to flee, but when they're fleeing, it was the means that God used to protect them. Imagine there's, say, 10 main countries in Western European Empire, and those 10 countries are persecuting the righteous. Now, those 10 countries became 7 because some of the headquarters of the 3 were uprooted and destroyed. So as these different people were being persecuted by the various different states under the order of the Catholic Church, imagine various different people all over Europe fleeing persecution, but where they were fleeing persecution was in city centers. So as they fled and they were destitute and afflicted, they went into the mountains. As they went in the mountains, some of them probably been known to them. They probably studied the Bible and understood this. Many of them, I believe, never understood what they were doing. They were just fleeing. But they were fulfilling prophecy because, as you know, Revelation chapter 12, which we're going to read in a second, states that as they fled to the mountains, that the earth gave them protection. And they were many times protected from, losing their life or because of their faith, because simply they were away. But remember, while they were away from the city centers, when the plagues hit, the disasters hit, and the primary disaster was the Muslims will come and wipe out by the millions in Europe, in the big city centers when they all attack these cities. The Christians in the mountain escape those type of slaughter by the diseases and by the Muslims. So when you understand that, you understand how interesting it is that the Lord provide a means that often people could overlook when it comes on to preparation. Now I know that the prepping videos that you've watched and stuff deals with this idea that when you're pulled away, but they're pulling away when things collapse. But notice God's people are protected. Why? Because it's a different method. You see, a person working and doing their thing, if they're in a situation where they can be debt free and live a less rich life in a more city area, they will do financially better. So financial value increase if you set yourself up properly. Moral worth increase. As I say, where I live, I look at trees. When I do see people, for the most part, they're not into fashion. I'm always surprised when I go back in the city, all people are into fashion. When I see guys in the local area I live here, they just dress in normal pants and stuff. When I go in the city, the guys have these tight pants, and it just looks strange. And literally, it looks strange to me if I'm away from a city for even just a week. So it's just you're not inundated with all the rubbish that you will see on a day-to-day basis. So it helps morally. Now, gonna mean you're gonna live a pure life. If you notice the difference between urbanites and people in the rural area, one is just more controlled by losing their financial value because they constantly buy. Anyhow, if you notice there now, this is how God had protected his people. So don't underrate and underestimate the benefit of that. Also, that the disasters normally hit heavy at the big city areas. So understand that. You give you freedom to fight the battles of the Lord. And if you know what I'm talking about here, because when you're not bought or sold, and also when you're in a better situation, you have more financial freedom and have more freedom from mainline denomination and mainline control. You can preach and teach things that are totally different from a regular pastor. If you listen to even my cadence of speaking, the things I talk about, you would not hear this from a regular pastor, probably 99.9% of the time. Because when you're in the system, you preach what the system tells you to preach. I've heard pastors who are, to me, that, they were blessed by the Lord much, but they'll say, when it comes on down to the church and the Bible, they go with the church. Very weird type of development happening amongst us. So, so various different things. If you're in a more rural, retired area, you're not part of the mainline control, it's easier to deal with things. Like if they come into your church and say, we're installing a female pastor. A person in a regular church, they can't do with anything like that. If they say who preach, what they preach, all that type of stuff, you have no control over that. So think about that. Now in Revelation 12, let me read the text for you just so you can know where I'm coming from with this passage of scripture. Revelation chapter 12, verse 15 through 17. As we continue to talk about how to face future and current troubles, Revelation 12, verse 15 through 17 says, "And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So the devil, persecuting the church, realized that he can't get a hand on the church. He can't destroy the church. So what he figured out he could do, he could flood the church. Now we know normally water represents people. So you see it in churches where they just start flood the church with, because they focus on evangelism. And so they just start flood the church with all kind of unfaithful people. And what happened is it will water down the church because, as you know, one person, one vote. So if you could have you could have Daniel and Ezekiel in a church, and you flood the church with 100 people who don't believe in nothing. And Daniel and Ezekiel only have one vote. When it comes on to vote for bringing in rock and roll, or vote for bringing in reggae, or vote for bringing in, theater in the church or whatever. If Daniel and Ezekiel was in the church, it didn't matter. One vote. It's time to vote. They vote. They outvoted. This is going to happen in the church. You got to understand that. So what it is, the devil flood the church. Send a flood after the woman to carry her away by the flood. But instead the woman be carried away of the flood, look at what happened in verse 16. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So what happened? As the persecution, got heavy in the time of the Dark Ages, God's people, outnumbered, outgunned by the crazies in the church, they fled. Because remember, one of the things that the Catholic Church instituted was the Mass. And the Mass was cause of the biggest persecution amongst the Christians, because many Christians said, we can't believe in that, and we can't practice that. So, because they rejected it, the Catholic Church went after them and to try to destroy them. Because the thing about it, most people would have a problem with that, but the righteous understood that that was an abomination. That is one of the major abominations of the Catholic Church. They fled the persecution, but as they fled, they went into the mountains. Well, secularized, a secular mindset person is not going to be moving into no mountain. They're not going to try to join them up there. So normally that retired living in a more rural environment protected the church, because most of the people who want to live proud and live the big life, they go into the city. That's what the city is for. Normally you meet people who are having mental health problems, they'll just say, I'm going to the city. And then you go to the city, you have all these people living on the bridges and stuff like that. So when you understand the earth helped the woman, and if you practice it now, you know what I'm saying. If you go visit churches that are more rural, it's a different flow. And the more you get that is, the more you understand. The other beautiful thing about understanding this is that, remember again, same story again, Revelation, when the now, not the Catholic now, but the Episcopalian Church attacked the Christians again, people were not agreeing with what it taught, like the Puritans and so forth. They fled England and they came to America. They were not fleeing, per se, the Catholics. They were fleeing the Catholic principles that were being put forward, the persecuting principles of the Catholics that were being put forward by the Anglican Church, or the Church of England. When they fled that, they came to America, and again, the earth helped the woman, because as they came to America, America was a place that you could be up in some mountain far away, in some place in America, some state here, and as long as the Indians wouldn't bother you or anything like that, and you could have peace that way, you could practice your religion the way you want to, and they would not be able to persecute you because it's not worth it. So you're free again. Every time you look at it in history, it was the same thing. When you read Hebrews and you look at David's story, David, as he was persecuted by Saul, he fled to the wilderness, and a place was prepared for him for his protection. When you look at the various prophets, most of the time when they lived, it was when God had them to flee. The moment you understand this is part of your preparation. You don't want to be in a situation when, again, now hear this out, if there's an outbreak of disease right now, think about where you live, think about where you move around. Are you less vulnerable in the city or in the country? And keep in mind that as we move forward, antibiotics are becoming less and less effective. And I've covered here, they're predicting that sooner or later the antibiotics will totally fail and it would mean an end of the hospital system. Now imagine this is a disease, say similar to Ebola, that's going around, and you can't get your help in the hospital. What do? And how vulnerable you are. If you're in a big metro area that everything, your movement is required to be moving mass transit, and mass transit is your primary way of movement. How do you move when there's a communicable disease spreading like wildfire in major city centers? So it's little scenarios like that that is similar to the Dark Ages. Because remember, in the Dark Ages, they would have the plague. Where would the plague wipe people out the most? In the city areas, because they were compacted. It was rat infested, feces and urine infested, garbage everywhere, and then they just dying like flies. So the woman helped the earth helped the woman. So you think about all of this. There's so many scenarios. That's a whole presentation by itself. For the sake of time, we keep moving. Verse 17 says, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and had God and have the testimony of Jesus." So the war doesn't stop. And when you understand that the difficulties that you face, even if you don't know you face it, because things seem so nice and beautiful. So anyhow, so that's one of the preparation you have to make. Another preparation you have to make is that you don't become part of the problem. Two things here I'm going to read next. And you avoid receiving the plagues. So in Hosea chapter 4, verse 1 through 9, it says, "Hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel, for the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood." Now, again, you know that most of the mass murders that happen in America are happening because of adultery. Swearing, lying, committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. So part of your preparation I believe, is to live by faith and to live faithfully. Keep your vows. Don't be part of the problem. But notice it says God has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. And because of this controversy, it says in verse 3, "Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away." Now we've seen this increase in our time, when you just see a mass dying off of fishes, and so you see sometimes a mass dying off of deers. As you know, the FDA does not approve for anyone to do deer farming. They have tested deers in the wild. People say, "Oh, I eat game meat, wild meat." Well, they've tested deers in the wild randomly and found them to have mad deer disease, similar to mad cow disease. This type of meat is very sickly, and I've said it here before. It's sickly because when you have the deer, they can eat from anywhere, drink from anywhere. So if there's a toxic pond, they'll drink from it and go poison themselves up, and then you eat the poison meat. So because we know what's happening, that there'll be mass die off of fishes, of birds. You've seen it where birds will start dropping out of the skies, and people think it's some type of omen, but it's simply the animals are diseased. So while your preparation for the end time, one of your preparation for the end time is simply to get off the meat-based diet. As you know, right now with these disasters, one of the first things you do is you lose power. If you're in Puerto Rico right now, they're telling you that you could lose power for the next 4 to 6 months. Well, this is a time for you to eat foods that are storable foods that are more grain-based. If you remember the story of Joseph, when the story of Joseph, you read the story, there was going to be 7 years of good and 7 years of lean. Joseph didn't say, well, let's fatten up the cows for the 7 years of lean. The cows was actually part of the equation. And so he said, what he said to, let's build grain silos and store the grain so that in a time of the lean time, in a time of the famine, we'll have grain, massive storage of grain. This is what Joseph did. When you understand that, you understand right there that if you have a long-term problem, you need to be able to live lean. The best lean diet you want to be able to be on is a plant-based diet. That diet will get you not only prepared to live without refrigeration, but it's also get you where you'll be able to have food that is less disease carrying, so that your disease load will decrease, so that in time of trouble you're healthier, you're fitter. I've seen people say, oh, I'm going to go into the bush, or I'm going to go into a more retired area. How are you going to go in a retired area? You depend upon the hospital system to keep you alive. You need to be talking about, you need to be changing your diet, eating a leaner diet, eating a diet that's more in line with John the Baptist and Daniel, to deal with the struggles that are ahead. It is no time for you to be dealing with a diet that is heavy in lard, heavy in meat, heavy in all that type of stuff. We're in trouble. As I say, if you're in Puerto Rico right now, it's hot. And if it's hot and you want to be able to have the leanest body you can possibly have, you want to be able to have a diet that is plant-based and grain-based, because if legumes, grain, that type of thing, because in that type of scenario, your food is better to be eaten fresh. And what's the best way to eat fresh food that doesn't have meat in it or animal product, because that's spoiled fast? You want to be able to be healthiest, because the services will be down, because if the hospitals can't get the proper supply and it's hard for them to keep a service in because they don't have electricity. Well, you want to be healthier. So if you plan to move in a more retired area, you want to be healthier, because if you're in a retired area, you're going to have decreased services. You don't want to always have to be rushed to the emergency room. You take care of your body, you take care of your digestive system, your heart, and so forth. You want to be the fittest that you possibly can, because that's the lifestyle that we're into. Look at what happened with the earthquake in Mexico and all those things. You got to get out and walk. You got to be living outside, because you don't want to be in a building. You're worried about the building's going to fall on you. So the type of thing that is predicted for the last days, it tells me that the message that we have is a message that prepares us to live in the last days. Everything that we are supposed to practice, whether we're doing it, as I say, we need to start exercising more faith or not. It makes us become better. I remember a few years back, I was in Jamaica on vacation, and a storm came through. I kind of know the storm was coming through, but we went anyway, and the hurricane came through. And in the area that we was, it knocked out the power. But I remember before the power got knocked out, everybody was going and doing like almost like a big party, because what they were doing was they were taking all the meat out of the refrigerator and cooking it, and then just eating it, because the power is gonna go. They just knew it. And we were just walking around seeing what was going on, kind of, just kind of observing over the fence. And we weren't doing anything because the power knocked out. We already on a hurricane diet, kind of, our disaster diet. We already eating plant-based, so we're just going to keep eating what we're eating. We don't have to worry about, what we're going to do with all the fish in the fridge. We're going to have to take it and cook it. No, you just leave it alone. So when you look at what's going on, the Bible predicts here in Hosea chapter 4, verse 3, that there's going to be mass die-off of the animals. You don't want to be parting of the animals in that situation or period. In Hosea chapter 4, verse 4, it said, let no man strive nor reprove another, for thy people are they that strive with the priests. So it's saying that we're coming more upon a time that you can't talk to people. And I'm sure you've seen that. We try to talk to people about what is right. They start tell you judge them. They sort of get upset. Many people in our society believe that they evolve, so they don't want to talk to you. So the Bible says, don't worry about them. Many times this is what the reality is. Therefore shall they fall in the day, and the prophet also shall fall with thee in the night, and I will destroy thy mother. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because they have rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. As they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore will I change their glory into shame. They eat up the sin of my people, and they set their heart on their iniquity. And there shall be like people, like priests, and I will punish them for their ways and reward them their doings. So when we look at the increased natural disasters, when we see the things coming, we have to understand as people of the Lord that why they're happening. The people are doing wickedness. The people are doing things that they're claiming to follow God, but yet they're doing some of the most base immoral activities. As their wickedness increase, so shall the wickedness Our social the disasters increase, social the sickness and the diseases increase, social the death of the animals increase. You got to know that this is the time we're living in, and you got to get your life in order and your soul in order with the Lord. Now, one of the best preparation as I can tell you to get prepared for the end time is found in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 through 26. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 through 26. And it simply says here, and this is the message that has always been a message of the Bible. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. This is the simple and best preparation for good times and bad times, but especially for bad times. In here is, to me, the basic and all the basic teachings of the Bible. People say, I'm following Christ, I'm a child of the Lord, sure. But yet Christ simply teach, if you want to follow me, first order of business is to deny yourself. Somebody say, well, why would that be so important? Think about it. Many of the end time troubles we're facing will be solved by simply self-denial. Denying self is one of the most basic teachings of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, and of Jesus Christ. And it is important because Christ simply says, in order for you to be a follower of Christ, the first order of business is you have to deny yourself. Not deny yourself of what's positively good for you, but deny yourself of the evil that you need to deny yourself of. Because remember, many of the troubles that are coming upon land is because people are selfish and they're greedy and they're jealous and they have an evil mind. These things need to be denied. So here it goes. You think about it, the financial problems that are coming upon the land and are upon the land. More and more the poor rolls, poor people are being added to the poor rolls. They're living below the poverty line. It's because self-denial is not being practiced by them or not being practiced by those who are oppressing them. So you want to be able to start practicing self-denial. You want to be able to start have cost savings. The more you deny yourself of unnecessary clothing and stop following fashion, is the more you prepare for the end times to not be enslaved by your own eyes. The more you practice eating food that you need, eat the calories that you need for the day, not the calories for two people, it's the more you're putting money back into your pocket. That's a cost saving. If you deny yourself fashion, if you deny yourself jewelry, if you deny yourself alcohol, alcohol is not necessary for life. If you deny yourself drugs, if you deny yourself all these evils that we ought to deny ourselves when we're saying we're a follower of Christ, just go ahead and do it. If you start to eat a very basic diet, a plant-based diet, a diet that will put healing in your body because you're eating more natural organic foods, you are doing the right thing and you're more prepared than the other person who is going broke because of their fork and knife. This is where you want to do it. If you are making those preparations, I can tell you that you're more prepared for the end times, because the troubles that we're going to face are troubles of epidemics with drugs. Well, if you're not taking drugs, you don't have to worry about that. As you watch others dying of drug overdose, alcoholic problems with greed because men want to control the financial welfare of others, you're going to avoid those troubles. If you make that preparation and you're going ahead and eating a plant-based diet where you're not coming out with all these cancers that are primarily caused, 90-something% or 80-something% of cancers are coming from eating animal, you are avoiding all these troubles. When you prepare not to live amongst people in areas that are slated for disasters, you are prepared in a better way. So ultimately, first Christ says, deny yourself. Then it says you have to take up your cross, because in order to be a Christian, you have to bear some cross. And primarily, cross bearing is literally back again to self-denial. Because often when we deny ourselves of evil, it pains us because we're coming from a carnal to a spiritual nature. The other thing with taking up the cross is that sometimes we will be persecuted for righteousness' sake. And so when this happens, you got to bear your cross. There's some pain to suffer in this life, not because you're deserving of the pain, but because that's just the way life is. So you live a righteous life, there's some cost to pay. And the next thing you do, you follow Christ. And all of a sudden, there's people who saying they're not having a breakthrough. They're not having a spiritual walk that they're supposed to have or they would like to have. And the problem is that they're trying to follow Christ without taking the first two steps. which is what Christ told them to do. Deny yourself. And all of a sudden, you grow spiritually. The next time you want to get angry, you want to get mad, next time you want to do something impulsive, and you see, what happened? I'm going to bear my cross. I'm going to deny myself. All of a sudden, you start to relate more to Jesus. And you start to know that your spiritual life will grow. Now, in verse 25, it says, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it." So if your focal point is that, I just want to save my life. And this comes in two ways. This comes in physically save my life. It could come in the idea of saving your reputation, trying to go after the world, trying to gain the whole world, as Christ is about to say. He says you lose it. The best way to live this life is to actually lose what you think you're trying to gain. Many people, they have one life to live. That's the disaster statement. Every time you hear a person say this, you're thinking, man, that person is not going to make the best of a Christian. They're not going to be a real Christian. Because they're so worried about, I have one life to live. So what are you going to do? Be sinful? No. So it says, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. And whosoever loses life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for a soul?" You don't want to be that person that gain the whole world, but you lose your soul. You don't want to be a person who end your life and say, I don't know what this life was all about. Because basically, I didn't find life. Christ wants you to find life. Christ wants you to live. But the way to live is to live by faith in the Son of God. And when you live like this, what will happen is simply you will find life. Because you find that, oh man, I can breathe. I didn't know that there was more out there to life. I always say this, that when I was on a regular diet and a regular mindset, I thought there was just white rice. And all of a sudden, when you give up a certain lifestyle, you start to figure out, wait a minute, there's more to life. There's hundreds of thousands of rice, various different variety of rice. There's so many different varieties of bananas and mangoes and yams and all these different things. And all of a sudden you find that there's a plethora of options that you were not having, because you just was eating white rice, white flour, chicken, beef, fish, blah blah. And all of a sudden you find, there's options out there. And there was literally, like how the Bible talk about in the Garden of Eden, there's options out there for you. So you want to be able to live that way. And if you live that way, God will truly bless. Now I'm going to have to do some summary here because I'm running out of time, and just want to say some things. One of the things that's important, and you can find this concept here, I'm going to tell you, in Acts chapter 2 verse 40 through 47. This is the story of the results of when the Spirit of the Lord fell upon the children of Israel. As we know that, as the Bible talks about in Daniel chapter 12, that some will get more dark while others will turn to the light and become white. So one of the things to me that the end time preparation is to have some people around you, to belong to a church, to belong to a body of people that looks out for you and you look out for them. Because as trouble increases, what you find is that isolation and being alone is not going to be the best thing. You want to have people around you who understand some of the things I'm talking about, live in it, making those moves, making those preparations. And what it will encourage you. You will learn together. You'll practice together. If you look at Acts, it says when the Spirit came upon them, they were in the apostles' doctrine. So they had a leadership teaching them a spiritual direction according to what Christ taught them. They had apostles' doctrine, fellowship, in breaking of bread, and in prayer. That is Acts chapter 2 verse 42. You can read the rest of it. So they were part of a faith community that prayed together, that broke bread together, that fellowship together, and believe in the same doctrine. They move in the same direction. Imagine you're part of a faith community that your pastor is telling you about once saved, always saved, or your pastor is telling you that all you have to do is just believe, and the pastor is telling you about, smooth doctrines and smooth things, and everything's going to be all right, and our best days are ahead. That's not preparing you for the end time. You need to be part of a faith community that is moving in the direction that I'm talking about, because that will get you in a better place so that you can Be prepared for the troubles that are ahead. You have some people around you that are moving a direction, that are trying to put themselves in a better position, both financially. I really believe in that financial, because in the end time, the main thing is going to be that you cannot buy or sell. So you have to be prepared for that. You're forewarned so you can make a move before it hits. Also, to be in a better situation health-wise, because we believe one of the biggest problems that's coming is health problems. We're already there, and it's going to get worse. And as I say, I already tell you, we're due for a financial crash. We're due for a health disaster. It's coming. We have a threat with swine flu and so forth, and we saw that the medical system and the people are not ready. Even people who are supposed to be Seventh Adventists, we're not ready. So look, it's coming. How's your health? Are you able to deal with disease naturally because the drugs are not working? So if you look at this, you understand. Another important point to have, and I just have to summarize here, because this is it would take me much longer to get through all this. Don't be surprised by not understanding the players. So you could be surprised and shocked by not understanding the players in the end time. Because when you look at Christ's teaching, one of the main work that Christ was doing for his disciples that they couldn't get, that Peter would even rebuke him over, is that Christ keeps saying that is the Pharisees and the Sadducees are going to kill me. They're going to crucify me. And the disciples it made them depressed. Because in their mind, they can't see that. They can't see be betrayed by spiritual wickedness in high places, by their church leaders who they think are for them. There's many people going to church week after week, and they don't understand that the person who's trying to make you send you to hell is actually your church leader. So it's surprising. So in the last days, this is where many of the troubles will come. And as you were saying, at the end of time, people will turn on their pastors and kill them because they realize they sold them out. They led them down the wrong path. So keep that in mind. Remember, we're told that it's the lay people that finish the work. So don't be surprised by this. Don't be taken. So in your preparation, you have to understand. You have to follow Christ's principle. Christ's principle simply says, by their fruit you shall know them. Somebody said, but what if the person is the head of my organization or my denomination? It doesn't matter. By their fruit. What if the person is a member in the pew next to me? It doesn't matter. By the fruit. It always go by the fruit. It does not go by the position or lack of position. It just simply go by the fruit. If a person is corrupt in their behavior and their talk, don't get into this, don't judge them. Just take their word for it. If they talk corrupt, they're corrupt. Another important thing here, and I close on this point. And it's this simple thought here that just looking at something here. So it's a simple thought here that is found in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 through 4. And I read this to close. And it says, wherefore, and the thought here is that you have to be willing to strive against all odds. And this is the whole idea, because your aim is to be an overcomer, is to make it. So this is where you have to take on that attitude. You strive against all odds. So it says simply there that wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. That should be our attitude. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endures such contradictions of sinners against himself, lest you be wearied and faint in your mind. Ye have not resisted unto blood, striving against sin. So no matter what's happening in your life, no matter what troubles that you're facing, no matter what struggles, it could be struggles that you've lost your home, it could be trouble that you lost a loved one, you could be faced with sickness, you could be faced with all kind of temptations that seem to be overrunning you. Understand that we have to strive harder, because there's a race that is set in front of us, and we can win in that race. How we win in that race? That we have to be willing to go up against whatever we're set, obstacles that we're faced, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. When you do this, God will bless you. God will move you in a positive direction, and God will open up the way for you to gain the victories you need to gain. But as I say, make sure that when you're preparing, You don't forget about having faith. You don't forget about putting yourself in the right position to deal with the troubles that the Bible predict, because the troubles will come. They are here and they're getting worse. You need to prepare your soul that you're keeping by committing to the ways of the Lord. Let us pray. We thank you, Lord, again for your love towards us and the blessings of knowing thee, the only true God. We pray, Father, that you may be with us as we go through the rest of this day. May you prepare our hearts and our mind, dear Lord, to receive of your word, and that we might listen to the Spirit, listen, dear Lord, to your words, and make the preparation, make the moves that we ought to make. May you bless us, we pray, dear Father, for Christ's sake. Amen. Well, thanks again for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning, where we should talk about wisdom for living. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.